All right, so let's ease into this. Today's topic is the way people actually react in English. And I think this is one of those things nobody really teaches, but everyone feels. Because when you're learning English, you don't just worry about what you're going to say, you worry about what happens after you say it. The reaction, the look on someone's face, the silence, the oh, the nod, all of that.
Yeah, and that's such a big point because most learners think the problem is vocabulary or grammar, but a lot of the fear comes from reactions. You're not scared of English itself, you're scared of what people might do with your English. Will they interrupt you? Will they correct you? Will they smile politely and then change the topic?
Exactly. And reactions in real life are messy. They're not clean like in textbooks. In books, someone asks a question and the other person answers perfectly. Full sentence, clear ending. In real life, people react with sounds, pauses, half words, faces, body language. Sometimes the reaction isn't even verbal.
And that silence, that one hurts the most for learners because silence feels like judgment, even when it's not. Someone hears you speak, pauses for 2 seconds, and your brain immediately starts building a whole story. They didn't understand me, they think I'm weird, I said something wrong.
When in reality, that person might just be tired, or distracted, or thinking about what to say next, or honestly, just slow at reacting. But when you're speaking in another language, your brain takes everything personally.
I remember this clearly when I was learning another language. I'd say something simple, and the person would just go, and that one sound would destroy me for the next hour. I'd replay it again and again, like, what kind of was that?
Right, and English has a lot of those reaction sounds. Oh, ah, right, okay. And learners often ask, is that good or bad? But the truth is, those reactions don't have one meaning. They change depending on tone, situation, and relationship.
This is where things get interesting because native speakers don't react in full sentences most of the time. If you tell someone a story, they're not going to say, I understand what you mean and I agree with your perspective. They'll say, yeah, or oh wow, or no way, and sometimes that's all.
And learners hear that and think, that's it? Did I do something wrong? But no, that is the reaction. That's the language. That's real English happening.
There's also this pressure learners feel to get a positive reaction, like laughter, excitement, big responses. But real life isn't like that. Most conversations are low energy, neutral, calm, and that doesn't mean you failed.
I love that you said that because neutral reactions are normal. Someone saying, yeah, that makes sense, in a calm voice is not boredom, it's comfort. It means the conversation is easy, nothing dramatic is happening, and that's actually a good sign.
But when you're learning, you expect fireworks. You expect proof that you did well, and when you don't get it, your confidence drops.
Let's talk about a very common situation. You finally speak up in a group, you say something you've been preparing in your head for 10 minutes, and someone responds with, oh, okay. And then the conversation continues. That moment hurts because in your head, that sentence was a big deal, and the reaction felt small.
But here's the shift that, oh, okay, often means you sounded normal. So normal that nobody needed to react strongly. You blended into the conversation instead of standing out as the person struggling with English.
And blending in is actually the goal. Not impressing, not performing, just being part of the flow.
Exactly. Reactions are about flow. People react just enough to keep things moving, not to evaluate your language.
Another thing learners don't realize is that native speakers react differently depending on how well you know you. If they don't know you well, reactions are usually shorter, more polite, less emotional. That's not because of your English, that's just social distance.
Yes, if your close friend reacts with a long story or a joke, and a coworker reacts with, yeah, I see, that's not an English issue, that's a relationship issue, and learners often confuse the two.
So they go home thinking, my English wasn't interesting enough, when really it was just a normal human interaction. Let's also talk about something people don't like to admit. Sometimes, people just don't react much. Not because of you, not because of English, just because that's how they are.
Yes, some people are low-reaction humans. They don't nod a lot, they don't say wow, they don't give feedback. And when you're sensitive about your English, those people feel terrifying.
But once you understand that, it's freeing. You stop chasing reactions. You stop adjusting your personality to get approval.
And your English gets better because you're calmer.
That calmness is important because when you're calm, you notice something interesting. People actually react more when you're relaxed. Not because your English suddenly improved, but because your energy changed.
There's also the idea that reactions don't always come immediately. Sometimes someone reacts later, they bring it up again, or they remember what you said, or quote you.
That's such a good point. Immediate reactions are not the full story, and learners often judge themselves too fast.
So if you're listening and you've ever thought, why didn't they react more? I want you to consider this. Maybe they did react, just not in the dramatic way you expected.
And maybe the real win is that you spoke. You entered the conversation. You didn't disappear.
That's already huge.
In the next part, we're going to look at specific types of reactions people use in English. The small ones, the quiet ones, the ones that confuse learners the most, and we'll talk about what they usually mean in real life, not in theory.
Yeah, and we'll also talk about how to respond back to those reactions, so the conversation doesn't die in your head, even if it looks calm on the outside.
So let's stay with this idea of reactions, because once you start paying attention, you realize how much of English is actually not about words, it's about timing, tone, and what people don't say. And this is where a lot of learners get confused, because silence in English doesn't always mean something went wrong.
Yeah, and silence is probably the most misunderstood reaction, especially for learners who come from cultures where silence feels uncomfortable or rude. In English conversations, silence can mean a lot of things, and most of them are neutral. It can mean someone is thinking or processing or just letting the moment sit.
And when you're speaking in English, that silence feels louder than usual. Your brain fills it with noise. You start thinking, okay, I lost them. I broke the conversation. I said something strange.
But often, nothing broke. The other person is just there, listening, and that's a reaction too.
Exactly. Listening is a reaction, and not all listening looks active. Some people don't nod, they don't say, aha, they don't interrupt, they just stay quiet. And that can feel scary if you're expecting constant feedback.
This is why learners sometimes overspeak. They keep adding more sentences because they're trying to force a reaction. They think, if I just explain more, maybe they'll respond.
And then you leave the conversation feeling exhausted, like you ran a marathon, when the conversation itself was actually simple.
Another common reaction people struggle with is when someone changes the topic quickly. You say something, they respond briefly, and then suddenly they talk about something else.
That one hurts. It feels like rejection, like, oh, they didn't care about what I said.
But in real English conversations, topic changes happen all the time. People aren't making statements about your value or your English. They're just following their thoughts.
Right. Conversations aren't interviews. They're not built to focus on one person for a long time. They move, they jump, they wander.
And sometimes people change the topic because they actually feel comfortable with you. They're not being polite anymore, they're being casual.
That's such an important point. Polite reactions are often more formal, more careful. Casual reactions are shorter, looser, sometimes even messy.
Let's talk about those short reactions that confuse learners the most. Things like, yeah, right, sure, fair enough. These sound cold on paper, but in real life, they're normal.
Yes, and tone matters a lot here. Yeah, said warmly, is agreement. Yeah, said flat, can be neutral. Yeah, said sharply, can be dismissal. Same word, completely different reaction.
This is why learners shouldn't panic over single words. You have to listen to the music of the sentence, not just the lyrics.
I love that, the music of the sentence. That includes tone, speed, volume, even facial expression.
And this is also why you don't need to react perfectly back. You don't need the perfect response. You just need a response.
Exactly. A lot of learners freeze because they think their response has to be clever or correct. But in real life, most reactions are small. A nod, a short phrase, a sound.
Like when someone tells you something unexpected and you say, "Oh, really?" That's a full reaction. You don't need to add more.
And if your brain goes blank, it's okay to buy time. People do this in English all the time. They say things like, "Let me think," or, that's a good question," or even just, "yeah." Those phrases don't mean anything deep. They're just bridges. They give your brain a second to breathe.
And that's important because conversations aren't tests. Nobody is grading your reaction speed.
Another thing learners worry about is when someone laughs. They think, are they laughing at my English? Most of the time, no. People laugh out of nervousness, politeness, surprise, or habit. Laughter doesn't always mean humor, and it definitely doesn't always mean judgment.
I've laughed in conversations when I didn't understand something fully just because I didn't want to interrupt. That doesn't mean I thought the other person was funny in a bad way.
And native speakers do that a lot, which learners don't realize.
So much of this comes down to one idea. Don't assume meaning too fast. Reactions are ambiguous. That means they're not clear. They can mean different things.
And when you assume the worst, you shrink. You speak less next time. You protect yourself.
But when you stay curious instead of judgmental, you stay open.
Curiosity is powerful here. Instead of thinking they didn't react well, you can think, interesting, that reaction was neutral. Let's keep going.
And the more you experience real reactions, the more your brain relaxes. You stop overanalyzing every sound and pause.
That's when English starts feeling lighter. Not perfect, just lighter.
And lighter English is better English.
In the next part, we're going to talk about how you can react naturally in English, even when you're not sure what to say, and how reacting simply can actually make conversations feel smoother and more confident.
Yeah, we'll look at the kinds of reactions you can use every day without preparing, without translating, just responding as yourself.
So now let's flip the lens a little, because we've talked a lot about how other people react to you. But the other half of this is how you react back, especially in those moments when your brain feels a little slow or unsure.
Yeah, because reactions go both ways. And a lot of learners think reacting means replying with a full sentence, something smart, something polished. But in real English, reacting is often much simpler than that.
Exactly. Most reactions are not speeches, they're signals. You're basically telling the other person, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm following you. That's it.
And the funny thing is, when learners try too hard to react correctly, they sometimes sound less natural than when they just react honestly.
Totally. Think about how you react in your own language. You don't plan it, you don't search for vocabulary, you just respond. Sometimes it's one word, sometimes it's a sound, sometimes it's a face.
And English is the same. You're allowed to react with, "Oh, wow," or "That's crazy," or "Yeah, I get that." Those are complete reactions. You don't need to add more unless you want to.
One thing that really helps is understanding that reactions don't have to move the conversation forward. They can just hold the space.
That's such a good way to say it, holding the space. Because learners often feel pressure to advance the conversation, like they're responsible for keeping it alive.
But conversations are shared. You're not carrying it alone. Sometimes your job is just to show you're present.
And presence sounds like, yeah, or I see, or even just a nod with eye contact. Those are powerful.
Another thing I notice with learners is that they avoid reacting because they're scared of reacting wrong. So they stay quiet, thinking silence is safer.
But silence can feel heavier than a simple reaction. A small response often feels warmer than no response at all.
Exactly. And if you react simply, people usually meet you there. They adjust. They slow down. They continue naturally.
This is where confidence quietly grows, not from saying big things, but from staying in the conversation.
And confidence changes how people react to you. When you're calm and present, reactions feel easier, softer, more human.
There's also something important we should say here. Not every conversation will feel good. Not every reaction will feel warm. And that's okay.
Yeah, sometimes people are tired, sometimes they're stressed, sometimes they're just not in the mood to connect deeply. That's life, not your English.
And when you stop blaming your English for everything, you free yourself. You stop carrying weight that was never yours.
I really want listeners to hear that. Your English is not the reason for every awkward moment.
Most awkward moments are just human moments.
So if you take one thing from today, let it be this. Reactions are not a judgment of you. They're just part of the rhythm of real conversations.
And the more you listen, the more you notice patterns, and the more natural your own reactions become.
You don't need to force confidence. It grows quietly when you keep showing up.
And if you're listening right now and thinking, this feels familiar, that means you're exactly where you need to be.
Before we wrap up, we just want to say this. If you enjoy learning English this way, through real conversations, real thoughts, and real feelings,
If you enjoy learning English this way, through real conversations, real thoughts, and real feelings, take a second to subscribe to the podcast and like this episode. It really helps us reach more learners who need this kind of calm, human English.
and if you want, tell us in the comments, what kind of reactions make you overthink the most? Silence, short answers, laughter, topic changes?
We read those, and they help shape future episodes.
Thanks for spending this time with us. Wherever you're listening from, we hope you feel a little lighter about your English today.
Yeah, keep speaking, keep reacting. You're doing better than you think.